Inland Istria entices both nature and cuisine enthusiasts, particularly those interested in the truffle and Malvasia, the queen of Istrian wines. These delights may be found in Croatia, in the little village of Kringa, 20 miles off the picturesque beach resorts of Por, Vrzar and Rovinj. It is easy to forget about the outside world in this traditional Istrian village, with such welcoming residents, a stunning church, and historic Roman walls. However, a few hundred years ago, no one in Kringa ever considered hedonism, since Europe's first documented vampire, identifiable by name and surname, roamed the town for almost 2 decades. In Kringa, the mythology of Strigon or Strigoi, the local word for vampire at the time, has been passed down from generation to generation, and it is said to have influenced the works of Byron, Le Fanu and even Stoker. Scared of Vlad the Impaler? Wait until you hear the story of the Istrian Strigoi. The horrifying tale begins in Istria in 1656 with the burial of a man named Jure Grando. Jure left behind a widow and a trail of fear that plagued Kringa for years to come. Locals began seeing his apparition walking the hamlet with a black cat sitting on his shoulder shortly after the man's burial. Every night for the next 16 years, the people of Kringa would hear knocks across the city in the middle of the night. After Jure knocked on the door of a man who died a few days later, the knocks became warnings, a guarantee that whoever lived in a house with its door banged had only a little time left. Nights in the village, defined by Jure's horrific smile, instilled terror in the residents of Kringa. He appeared before Father Giorgio, the very same gentleman who performed the ceremony at his burial, and Grando's widow told the frightening account of her late husband tormenting her at night. His rotten body and horrific visage, which appeared to be smiling, would terrorize her every night, imposing what he felt were her marriage responsibilities on her long after his death. After more than a decade, the locals became tired of living in constant dread every night. Thus Father Giorgio decided to confront Jure, holding his crucifix and screaming at the monster, "Behold Jesus Christ, you Strigon! Stop torturing us!" And as the vampire fled, tears began to pour from the corners of Father Giorgio's eyes at the sight of such a terrifying scene. A few nights later, a valiant prefect known as Miho Radetic gathered a group of villagers to go up against Jure and get rid of him for good. They tracked the vampire down and stabbed him in the chest with a hawthorn stick. It didn't work, with a stick rebounding off his chest, allowing the monster to flee for the second time. The following night, a group of 9 locals crept into the cemetery, armed with crosses, candles and sticks. They cautiously walked towards Jure Grando's burial site and dug up the coffin of the vampire. They opened it, stunned to discover Jure's flawlessly preserved body with a smile on his lifeless face, the very same smile that has been tormenting them every night. They promptly attempted to exorcise the vampire's body, but to no avail. At that point, when every hope seemed to vanish, one of the locals, Stipan Milezic, decided to take matters into his own hands. He swiftly fetched a saw and attempted to sever Jure's head. His jaw flew open and a blood-curdling howl exited his mouth as soon as the saw pierced his flesh. Blood gushed from his wound and began filling the surrounding graves as the vital fluid of each of his victims returned back to the soil. Finally, the vampire slayer were victorious. Kringa was free from the enormous evil, and the community was restored to peace and harmony. It has stayed this way ever since, with the only vampires being those who cannot get enough Istrian delicacies.